Hello, this is Dr. Briscoe here. I'm a teacher at Suncoast Community High School in Riviera Beach, Florida. We're on topic 2.4 today, looking at the roles and powers of the president, and specifically we're going to talk about formal and informal powers and how the president is able to use those to meet a policy agenda. So we have over on the left, what are the formal and informal powers and how the president is going to use those. And then stated as tasks, describe the formal powers, describe the informal powers, and explain how the president can use those powers to implement a policy agenda. I've got our textbooks highlighted here, are describe and explain. So what will we learn? Be able to answer the following questions. What are the formal powers of the president? What are the informal powers of the president? And how are they made legitimate or legitimized? How do presidents use their formal and informal powers to implement a policy agenda? So we're going to find the formal powers of the president in Article 2, Sections 1 and 2, and then also in Article 1, Section 7. So I've highlighted the major parts here that are important. We've got the president's commander-in-chief having the power to the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy, and now with all of the armed forces, the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, power with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, and other appointments I think would be associated with the same advice and consent power, and then the power to fill up vacancies that might happen during a congressional recess. And with the Article 1 piece, this is where we see the president having the authority to veto legislation passed by Congress. And that's a pretty significant a tool for the president in ensuring that legislation that's passed is something that he or she is in favor of. Implied and informal powers of the president. We have foreign policy powers that come from the formal power of commander-in-chief and the power of the treaties, and then the informal power with executive agreements, which I'll talk about in a second. Bargaining and persuasion, pretty informal, coming from the formal powers that people have a tendency to revere, the respect that's given to the office holder as leader of the country. Executive orders, these are like laws that the president can put into place and really bypass Congress. Don't have to get them to do anything, and the presidents will use these and are increasingly using executive orders. Executive agreements are treaties. So the ability then to bypass the Senate and use executive power, which is implied, and making those executive agreements. Also, we have these signing statements, which are interesting in that pretty much the president is telling Congress that there's some part of a law or a law that is going to be implemented. It's already been passed and it's been signed, but the president has concerns about it and may not implement it as Congress intended. That's a constitutional kind of a quandary there, in that the president is supposed to, quote, faithfully execute the law. But presidents have been using them. More of them use them than did in the past. And so unless it gets to a court, then it'll continue. Assertion of executive privilege. This was done first by President Nixon. The court said, yes, this does exist. You don't have to tell everything, reveal every communication that you have. But the court said that you must reveal communications if they have something to do with a criminal investigation, that you could not hide those. This is just a visual here of the formal powers as they are expressed, delegated, implied, and then inherent in the presidency, and then also the informal powers of the president, chief of the party, negotiator with Congress, and then those things with the public, using social and digital media to connect with the public. So some questions just to think about regarding executive power. We're not going to answer them there, but they're just interesting to think about and may help you in terms of questions that you might be asked about the executive branch, particularly in an FRQ. So remember that you can always pause, and we're going to practice with some FRQs. All of the following are formal or informal sources of presidential power, except the authority to raise revenue, The president can do which of the following without seeking consent from either the House or the Senate. That is deploying troops. Don't need to ask anyone about that. Probably supposed to inform, but may not do that. Executive agreements have been cited as evidence that modern presidents try to avoid checks and balances by the legislative branch. So what should we take away? I've got here listed some of the formal powers of the president that come from Article 2 in the Constitution, and I've got some of the informal powers listed here and how it is that they become legitimate, either as implied sort of powers or just through presidents using them, and it is now considered a normal thing. Presidents using their formal and informal powers to implement agenda. They're going to work with members of their party in the House and Senate. Members of Congress will propose policy legislation on behalf of the president with appointment powers, appointing people that want to see the president's agenda implemented in the courts as head of executive departments and also in the bureaucracy. Back where we started, we can do both of those things, and we can also explain how the president can use those powers to implement his policy agenda. Okay, we are going to stop there. Thank you.